welcome to yet another edition of E-Expressions for the New Indian Express. I have with me two distinguished diplomats, Rakesh Sood, former ambassador to France and Afghanistan, and Ambassador K.C. Singh, former Secretary MEA, and a man who knows both of them very well, and also American politics, which has started to behave, as he just said, like politics in Bihar. Mr. Prabhu Chawla, the editorial director of the New Indian Express. So, gentlemen, may I start with Ambassador Sood? Exactly what is going on currently? It seems like there's going to be a street fight.
Well, actually, we have always believed that the US election is decided the day the voting takes place, but it's actually a three-stage election.
Right.
And there is one element of the US presidential election which is neither written in their constitution, nor is there any legal basis for it, but it is perhaps the most important norm. And that is when the losing candidate makes his concession speech.
Right.
Because that normally happens within either the same day or a day later or something like that. And that then clears the way for the other two stages to go through without any contention. What are the other two stages? The other two stages are first the Electoral College, and that is going to meet on 14th December. And that is, by now, everybody is an expert on the Electoral College. 270 votes out of 538, whoever gets it, that kind of thing. And then the third stage is on 6th of January, when the Congress meets and the Congress approves or legitimizes the result of the Electoral College. And the Congress then finally puts the stamp of approval on the election of the president. The Senate puts the stamp of approval on the election of the vice president. And then on 20th of January, as per the Constitution, the new administration takes over. So because of the concession speech, which is actually a tradition, it is a custom, you have the other two cases, the other two stages taking place smoothly. Right. In this particular case, what has happened with the polarization is that the election is quite clearly a very, very hard-fought election. We don't know which way it is going to turn.
Right.
And from the statement that President Trump has already made, he's already invoked the Supreme Court and things like that. So it is quite clear that this is going to be controversial.
Right.
And that's what we are going to see in coming days.
Indeed. Ambassador Singh, what do you have to say? You were talking briefly about the virus transporting itself to the USA.
Look, this is not the first time what Ambassador Sood is saying. 2000, exactly the same thing happened. Right. At one stage, Al Gore was going to concede, and then he took it back when he realized it was all hinging on the votes in Florida. And that got very messy because the Florida Supreme Court was allowing the counting to go on. Right. And then the US Supreme Court decided to step in. Right. And most legal experts say they had no locus standi. They had no business to step in because, as you know, it's a federal system. And in the federal system, states are unlike a system where you have a chief election commissioner and an election commission. In US, the methodology of election is decided by each state. And that's why there is great variation in how they go about it, which is what we are seeing now. Right. Because in case of three states, that is Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio, simultaneous counting took place, both in respect of the votes cast yesterday, as well as the postal ballots. Right. In case of Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Wisconsin, that is not the case. We are finding it's got backloaded. And that was always a worry. And that's why Trump has been for many weeks realizing this ultimately will come down to what is called the blue wall, the three states in the north, in the Midwest North. Right. He has been delegitimizing the electoral process. He's been saying the result must come by nightfall. Now, there is no such thing once the votes have been cast, and particularly when you have a pandemic, and a lot of people have sent in postal ballots. Right. I mean, there is absolutely, you can't, and now he did exactly that today. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he comes before the media, and instead of saying what Biden said, that we think we are going to win, right, he said, I have won. Why are they not legitimizing? And he contradicted himself. He's saying in Arizona, please keep counting the votes because he's lagging there. But in Pennsylvania, he says it's all fraud. It shouldn't be counted. Now, I don't think any court will intervene. They've been to the Supreme Court first on the postal ballots, and even the Supreme Court at that stage endorsed it. They said what has been received by this date, what is probably controversial is a local decision to say even if it is stamped on November 3 and it comes 3 days later, it'll still be counted. Maybe on that they can do. But they can't go to the Supreme Court directly, which is what Trump is threatening to do. But in the process, he has caused a lot of, he has exacerbated the tension and probably taken it to the street level. But what we've seen, fortunately, is that Wisconsin has moved very rapidly. There's been a switch there. Biden is leading, albeit by a very narrow margin. Because the postal ballots are coming in, which are supposed to be 80%, 20%. Democrats, 80% Democrats, 20% Republicans. And I think Trump may have realized that these ballots are likely to swing Pennsylvania or certainly Massachusetts. If these three go, which is 46 seats, then Biden is home and dry. Biden probably just needs 2 of them if he does not lose Nevada, because there his lead is narrowed and he's won Arizona. Now with that, he just needs 2 out of 3. But having lost Arizona, and if Georgia by then is not declared, that's the other troublesome one, because the governor is a Republican. So he's just stopped the counting this night. And therefore he's waiting for daylight so that the Republicans can rush to a court. The neater outcome will be if, Biden gets 2 out of these 3, then Georgia is moot. It's not important to win or lose Georgia. But if this does not happen, then I think we're in for a messy fight.
So it makes one feel rather proud of our own system, doesn't one? You can feel quite chuffed about it. We have 800 million people who vote, and it goes pretty smoothly.
Here, if anything, the opposition curses the machines. They don't curse the ruling party.
No, Kathy, I'll ask both the ambassadors one question, because I spoke to some people in America today before coming here. They were all still in the other side. They're still awake and waiting for that. And most of them feel that there is some kind of stuffing of votes going on. The people are bringing in bag full of votes. They are throwing into the counting center. That is what is happening. That's why Trump was referring to, perhaps, because votes are still, somebody is bringing the votes, ballot papers, and throwing into a counting center. They have stopped, in fact. Counting has happened in some of the states, but they are not declaring Trump victorious because he has got more votes. I don't know whether you have heard it or not, but I have heard from the horse's mouth that votes are being stuffed there, like used to happen in Bihar and everywhere else. Either you take away the counting machine or you take away the ballot paper. Here the ballot paper are being brought from outside to be counted when the counting is already stopped.
But Prabhu, this is not the first time. Trump has said while electioneering that thousands of ballot papers were found in a river. They were not, because Trump operates on a parallel reality. And then there are these people of QAnon.
You see, I'm not quoting Trump. I'm quoting the people who are right there.
Correct. But these are people, followers of Trump, are like the Bhagats here. Anything that the top man says is just the truth. And that is the truth. So, you have...
Casey, try it like a true liberal. You're also assuming certain things. That my person I have spoken to is a Bhakt. He's not.
Was he witness to the stuffing?
Yes. That's what I'm asking. No, I doubt it, but I can't not doubt my own relatives.
No, did he take a picture? No, he would have taken a video, a picture.
I'm telling you another one thing that happened in this election, which is very surprising. They sent me a couple of pictures about 5 days ago, the kind of procession happening there in favor of so and so. I'm not going to name because Casey will jump to the conclusion again. That mail was stopped by Google. That it is a political propaganda. You are sending mails with the pictures of a particular candidate. It was stopped. It is on record. I'll show you. That is the thing going on. Google is stopping the mails also going from in favor of a particular candidate, distributing happening there. That's the worst kind of censorship happening around that place. Google is not allowing in the communication of people. I've got the facts of that machine. I showed you. I got through the WhatsApp that what the mail was stopped. And Google said it's a propaganda. It is a picture of Trump campaigning, nothing else. So if this is expected from a democracy of the West, what we call the liberal democracy, all of those who go and study there, they come back, follow the same model here. But when it comes to personal choices, whether it's here, because here the media is also buck, There the media is entirely opposite. There, what they are doing, they hide everything which the government is supposed to be doing badly, but they hide it here. But there, everything, if he's winning, he's losing. So I don't know who is telling the rest, because I'm in my case, whether it wins or loses, it doesn't make a difference to me. But what I'm hearing is shocking. Why it is happening in America? Both of you have been diplomats. You must have studied from within. Rakesh has been there in America. So why this kind of change in the environment in American democratic system?
Well,
Rakesh?
the change it hasn't come with Trump. The change has been coming for the last few decades, and we've seen that happening over the last few decades. It began in the 1980s. See, democracy is a basic social compact, and there is a certain, there is a certain commitment and there is a certain obligation. And here, what we have seen is that that compact is something that has been gradually eroding. And I think one of the biggest challenges has been for the Republican Party. The Republican Party has undergone a massive transformation. Now, Trump was not the preferred candidate of the Republican Party even in 2016. We all know this.
Yes.
Everybody knows this. He was seen as an outsider. However, the Republican Party adopted Trump as their nominee for the simple reason that it suited the Republican Party. And therefore, this is what has continued. But in the process, the Republican Party has moved far right. And that has created its own counter reaction in the form of Bernie Sanders and so on. Now, you would have thought that, when the Democratic primaries were taking place in this year, you had Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, which were much more to the center left, but eventually the Democratic Party decided to go in with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is certainly not seen as a far left. He's seen far more as a centrist, as a pragmatist, and so on. Now, this is the kind of readjustment of the bipartisan politics. See, US has traditionally followed a two-party system in their election. But what is happening is internal fracturing of political parties. So somewhere along the way, I think what we are going to see eventually is a breakdown of the two-party system in the United States. You are going to see over a period of time, I think politics in the US, due to a variety of reasons, and Prabhu, I think media also plays a part in it, including social media, including Google that you referred to. So all of this is going to have an impact. And I think we are going to see a shift away from the two-party system which has dominated. In fact, when the first election took place and George Washington became the first president of the United States in 1789, at that point, you didn't have political parties in the US. Political parties evolved separately and subsequently. And over a period of time, and in fact, when the Constitution was being written, the framers of the US Constitution felt negatively about the power of political parties. But eventually, political parties evolved, two political parties emerged, the Republicans in their current form and the Democrats. And then they became more and more powerful. And then they dominated the whole primaries and the electoral system and so on. And I think what we are seeing today is actually something that is going to be a fragmentation.
Kathy, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, that's quite fascinating. Yeah.
Well, it is not going to happen now. I mean, but I think over a period of time, that would be the direction in which it is likely to evolve.
Yeah.
I don't think the bipartisan system may change, but what has happened is that the Republican Party has just prostrated itself before a rebel-rousing, popular leader who basically addresses the people directly through social media. He doesn't really need the party. For him, it's tweet by tweet, and parties don't need. So party is just attached to him, and the party needs him to get the senators and the congressmen elected. So it is populism by which this person has become, and this is exactly what the founding fathers of America feared, and that is why the checks and balances were created in the U.S. system. That the Congress will be a check on a president. They were always worried about an autocratic leader who becomes a dictator. But if Trump comes back this time with a Supreme Court completely subservient to him, with a 6-3, with 3 nominees posted by him and a 6-3 majority, and Senate, if it does not flip and remains with the Republicans, and we've seen how obedient and subservient the Senate is, that even on something like the nomination of a judge, 7 days before the election, when they didn't agree in case of Obama, when a nomination was made 10 months before the election, on the basis that it was an election year. Now you do it 7 days before. So it's essentially a very autocratic, centralized system where parties have become defunct. In fact, this is one of various books have been written on how democracies function. And Ambassador Sood is right. Democracies have written and unwritten rules. And unwritten rules are respect for your opponent, not the threat of use of force, basically accepting certain norms, like when you have lost, you have lost. You don't say, no, if I've lost, it's illegal, it's illegitimate. Now, once that happens, then democracy is already undermined. And therefore, I think what is happening is this is a result. This is not just in US. This is a result globally of globalization, marginalization of majority, middle class, working classes, the upper classes, the rich, garnering all the gain of globalization, and of course, the movement of immigrants. So there are twin factors which are being used by Trump, used by others, not just by Trump. In India also it is used. In India, you use the minority community, the Muslim. Bolsonaro uses something else in Brazil. You go to Turkey and he uses something else. So these are populist right-wing leaders who basically connect with the people directly, not with a positive vision, but with a vision of playing on the fears of the populists and therefore garnering support from them. Now, once that happens, it becomes very difficult for democracy to function and the parties become irrelevant.
Yeah, it's a personality-less election. I know in America, it is always in personality, which is happening much more often now. But I'm coming back to the basic question which both of you raised just now, rich people and whatnot. Because Obama, he represented the compromise, what they call, what Modi called the Lutyens Valley. There is a Washington lobby there in America, they are known as. Any candidate who is not accepted by Washington is always seen as an outsider. So Trump was an outsider, Rakesh said, in the beginning, because he did not belong to what Washington thinks America should have as one of the presidents. But I'm coming to a bigger question, because outside interference, corporate interference. In this case, there are allegations in America that Russia was interfering, China was interfering. Now I can see certainly because Facebook, Google, everybody is interfering in the election. It means the people's mandate is not being reflected as it should be. And these social media, what we are talking about, they have banned Trump also, they have banned others also. But do you agree that interference from outside, the non-state players, rich players who control the communication system, they are also trying to divide the society and polarize that? Rakesh.
Well, you're right, Prabhu, in the sense that what we are seeing is whether this is adding to the polarization, certainly, but this is also a reflection of the polarization. Polarization is a phenomena that has led to, and in a sense, social media with its echo chamber phenomena adds to the polarization, because what happens is that people everybody becomes a journalist, everybody has a voice, everybody has a platform, and everybody has a supportive audience. And so, you tend to hear what you want to hear and that kind of thing. So it actually, the echo chamber effect of social media adds to the polarization. And this is where democracy finds, that is what I said, by developing a new social compact for sustaining democracy. And where do you then develop these norms as to how democracy is to be sustained under these strains? And I think that is a challenge. And as Casey said, you have in different countries, given the different environments, you have different populist authoritarian leaders who use, and you will find that there is a common thing. All of them try to create their own narrative, whether it is Bolsonaro in Brazil, or whether it is Erdogan in Turkey, or whether it is Trump. I mean, there is, in a sense, a disregard for science, a disregard for facts. It is as if what I say as the leader is what is the narrative, and that is what is sought to be created.
Now, Rakesh, I asked you a specific question. This is interference from outside, whether it is either the tech giants who are interfering everywhere, and whether they're Russia and whatnot. Both of you are diplomats, must be knowing how the outside agencies can influence an electoral outcome. So what system they use to influence it?
Well, Prabhu, again, I mean, for 2016, I think that there is a certain amount of material that is available in the public domain, which talks of the fact that yes, that there was some interference. Now, whether it was decisive or not, nobody can really determine that. For the current election, I'm not sure whether that kind of interference, whether there is any hard evidence. Yes, there may have been attempts. I think we've seen newspaper media reports indicating that there were perhaps attempts. But I think the US systems have also been tightened. And so I don't think that there is any evidence to indicate that for the current election, that there has been interference. Although you would perhaps remember that even earlier today, early in the morning, there was some report saying that in North Carolina, bots were ringing up people saying the queues are very long, you don't need to go and vote today, you can go and vote tomorrow. And the Attorney General in North Carolina went public to inform the people, look, this is all a false notice, and actually you have to vote today, etc., etc. So, so now, but again, when I tried to check as to who was behind these bots, there is absolutely nothing in terms of any speculation even as to who was behind the bots which was trying to delay or suppress voter participation in North Carolina. Now, whether this also happened in other states or not, I really don't know. I mean, we are too close to the event, I guess.
I wanted to ask both of you, gentlemen, what does it mean for the image of America? When both of you started out as, as diplomats, America really was a giant, and culturally, economically, it was such a unipolar world, even though, of course, there was Soviet Russia. But America was always a leading light in terms of democracy. What does it mean now to see the hollowness sometimes of American democracy, American healthcare, the American education system? It doesn't seem as Teflonish as it used to be, right?
You're asking me?
Yeah, well, both of you.
Let Casey answer that.
No, if you nominate, it's better. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Casey. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Look, the US commitment to democracy at home was always there, but US commitment to democracy all through the Cold War was always very suspect.
Right.
There is a famous statement of somebody saying, so-and-so is a bastard. Why are you supporting that dictator in Latin America?
But
and the US president saying he is a bastard.
Our bastard.
So, during the Cold War, it was very selective. We've seen what happened in Pakistan. Democracy came, democracy went. US did not shed any tears all over the Gulf. Shah of Iran, they backed the Shah of Iran. So therefore, it was only sort of, but then the opposition was coming from Soviet Union. The fight was not so much about systems as the communist ideology and the capitalist ideology. It was not so much about systems.
Right.
Whereas now in between US, when it became the dominant hegemon for almost 3 decades after 1991, they wasted an opportunity. They wasted so much money and so much material and lost so many lives trying to bring democracy to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Right.
Now, it would have been obvious from the beginning that democracy in the Western liberal form is not exportable, and it's not exportable in toto, because the minute you take away a Mubarak or you take away an Assad, then you're unleashing forces, and many of those forces are right-wing religious forces.
Right.
And it becomes very difficult, and they are not committed to democracy. We saw the Muslim Brotherhood come in Egypt, and then the military had to step in again. And one of the finest speeches, I think one of the presidents who was committed to this was Barack Obama. And his speech at Cairo University was a great speech. He went to Egypt because he saw when the Arab Spring started. Then as a cerebral being, he realized that if you have to counter radical Islam, then the argument that the only way to, then that US is manipulating these dictators, that argument had to be countered. And the only way was you allow democratic forces to come up. And he thought that will be the answer to Al-Qaeda, answer to all these radical forces using violence. But then what happened was that Muslim Brotherhood came in, and then they started completely demolishing the systems. They came in using democracy, but then they were committed to an extreme right-wing ideology.
Right.
And that is where, then I think America stepped back. They realized you cannot export democracy in its current form as practiced in the West. And now, in any case, it's not even practiced in the West, as we are seeing. And this is what China is saying. China is gloating over it. They're saying, look at us. You've been giving us lectures about political reform and political changes in our country, but socio-economically, we are far ahead. We have conquered the pandemic. Our economy is back on track. And you guys don't know, your nose from your tail yet. and therefore, they're having the last laugh. Absolutely. And what is happening in America now will only support it. So what kind of a model is it? Where you can't even decide how to conduct an election and do orderly change from one president to the next.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary time. Ambassador Sood.
Well, I think when the US emerged as the sole superpower, so to say, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, as Casey pointed out in 1991, the US thought that they could do to the rest of the world, like Iraq, Afghanistan, what they had done in terms of West Europe or the reconstruction of West Europe post 1945. But as Casey very clearly emphasized, the societies here were totally different as compared to the West European societies. And that was a different moment in time because of the bipolar world. And here you had a very different moment. But I think in addition to everything else that happened in the subsequent years was also the rise of China. So the US was no longer as dominant. I mean, it is still today the largest economy and has the largest defense forces and the largest budget. But the fact is that it is no longer the sole superpower. It is no longer the indispensable superpower, as Madeleine Albright used to call it during the Clinton years.
Right.
That notion has changed. So the shine has gone off. And I think Trump has you see, the US also had internal differences. It had always had its racial and economic fault lines of inequality and racial fault lines and so on. And the US society is conscious of it. Now, the problem is that Trump has actually mined those fault lines for his own political purposes. And that has polarized society. So, domestically, what it has done is it has, instead of bringing the society together, it has actually divided society in a lot of ways. And I think that is what is the biggest challenge for the US. So today, the US faces not just the external challenge of a rising China and all the rest of it, or a disruptive Russia and things like that, or a disorderly world, but the US also faces domestic challenges, both economic challenges as well as racial challenges, because of the polarized society. I mean, the Black Lives Matter, that movement was something that emerged largely, and the Trump administration was unable to put a healing touch out to it.
No. Both Ambassador, I have Gabri, just a minute, because a very interesting point you're making about the collapse of a superpower concept. Basically, you're talking about, Rakesh. I'm just asking another question to both of you. That slogan of Mr. Trump has been "Make America Great Again," which is a very nationalistic slogan. Okay, America is minimizing its stature, so maximization of the American superpower should happen. He has been always feeling to that point, going to the lobby for America, Great America, which everybody talks about it. But you are saying no, it is not. America as a superpower has collapsed. But there is the rise of America, the super political power or democratic power has collapsed. But the rise of capitalism seems to be quite evident in that country. It's a big tech companies or big corporate world who are much more acceptable both in China and in India or bigger democracy. They can communicate directly with the leaders of other countries. Earlier it was being done through the political leadership. The political leadership of the United States, do you think, has become just a symbolic political leadership who happens to be president of the United States of America, but he is not accepted as United States of America president because he doesn't have that kind of credibility which other Bill Gates have got or Zuckerberg has got, somebody else has got. Don't you think that's a change in American way of thinking? America is more an economic power, superpower, where American businessmen are talking on behalf of America rather than the presidential leadership of that country.
No, that is a factor, Prabhu, of what Trump is, because he's both isolationist. He's withdrawn from the alliance system. He went and lectured NATO countries. He literally walked out of a NATO summit. He walked out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Japan was trying to create as a counter to China, the economic partnership of the Indo-Pacific. So on the one side, there's a contradiction there. He wants to make America great again by looking inwards, by bringing businesses back, by being isolationist, being anti-globalization, cutting off global supply chains, reducing commitments abroad. By the same time, he wants to also strut around and be taken seriously all over the world. So I think what he has done is something probably which was overdue, because on the positive side, he's the first US president who has directly confronted China. No other US president so openly and directly confronted the problem, which is the way China is rising and the way the Chinese influence has spread over the last 5 to 7 years, with President Xi also saying, having a dream of making China great again. Now, Mr. Modi wants to make India great again. Now, there are many guys trying to make their own countries great again. But in the process, what's happened is that you have the linkages and the confrontation, which that is causing. You may have a Quad then to contain, but we got the Chinese sitting in Ladakh across the LAC. Part of that is the Chinese perceiving you as joining this threatening alliance in their mind, which they realize will be a challenge to them, to their rise, to their becoming the predominant power in the world, definitely the predominant power in Asia. So I think we are in a very dangerous time when trade groupings like WTO, they've been debased. UN's role itself is debased. Human Rights Council, America has quit them, and look at the countries which have got elected to it. Saudis, and you got all kinds of countries elected to the Human Rights Council, which have little commitment to human rights. So therefore, international institutions, financial and political, as well as the alliance systems involving trade, commerce, these are all now seen as broken things. Is Trump capable of reinventing them? That is the only danger, that a Biden coming in will probably not change the overall approach, but will be able to carry other partners along to reform them or realign them or bring about new compact. This is the post-Second World War compact. Trump is not capable of creating any compact. He is a disruptive force. Now, do you want a disruptive force in another 4 years? That is a question.
Ambassador Sood, I wanted to extend that idea. There was someone who said something very interesting, that even if Trump is defeated, Trumpism will survive. I found that a very interesting idea. Do you agree with that?
Well, to an extent, what Ambassador Casey Singh said, see, Trump took certain themes that were already there, and then he was able to play with a number of them. Some of them in a very negative fashion, but some of them perhaps deserving of that attention. Now, let's take China for a minute. As Ambassador Casey Singh said, Trump was able to call out China. Now, earlier what had happened, but here again, you see, you look at the contradiction. Obama actually had identified China, but Obama did not call China a threat. He did not call China a revisionist power. What he wanted to do was he wanted to be able to work with China as well as in things like climate change, in dealings with North Korea, etc. And at the same time, also move from a policy of competition, which was already there, to a little bit of a containment. And where did you see this containment? You saw it in his rebalancing to Asia policy,
Right.
which was announced. And you saw it in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the economic aspect of it, in which Japan took the lead. Now, so when Trump comes in, what he does is he moves from containment to an outright confrontation. And he says this is a trade war and a technology war and so on and so on. Now, many of the technology controls had actually been introduced during the Obama administration by Secretary Ash Carter. In fact, the first study of the Defense Intelligence Unit was created by Ash Carter in the Pentagon. And the first study of the DIU was brought out during Ash Carter's time to show how China was actually trying to steal cutting edge technologies and the way they were going about it. And therefore, there was a growing need to strengthen laws relating to the Committee on Foreign Investments in US and things like that, which happened. So what I'm saying, but then Trump at the same time converted the containment into a confrontation. But at the same time, what he did was he took away the TPP because he withdrew from the TPP.
Right.
So the confrontation remained as a frontal trade war, technology war, etc., etc. Now, which meant that other countries like Japan, like South Korea, like countries in the ASEAN or India were then faced with this situation of us versus them kind of thing, making a choice between are you with US or are you with China? Whereas I think Obama realized that those are uncomfortable choices, unrealistic choices, because China, unlike the Soviet Union, is an integrated economy globally. Right. Soviet Union was not an integrated economy globally. Soviet Union was only integrated within the Eastern Bloc.
Eastern Bloc, yeah.
Right. But China is a globally integrated economy. For 127 countries, China is their biggest trading partner.
Right.
That is extremely unusual. Chinese investment, and China has sort of, they have planned and they have a certain strategy. If you look at the Belt and Road strategy, that is also an investment strategy which brings in, more than 50 odd countries into a certain investment related relationship of infrastructure development, etc., etc. So Obama, realizing this, preferred, rather than a confrontational approach, which can easily translate into conflict. Because the next stage, you see, you move from cooperation to competition,
right,
from competition to containment, from containment to confrontation, and after confrontation, the next stage is conflict.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Trump decided that he wanted to shift gears and move to confrontation.
Directly.
But then,
I think, let us discuss the takeaways from this election, because the time is left now. Both of them, what are the takeaways globally and particularly in respect to India? Because India, the continuation in foreign policy is always the familiar uniqueness of every regime, whether it is India, whether it is there is some kind of a continuity in foreign relationship. And Rakesh, you have been there and you have been watching the case. He has been reading the fight secretly in South Block. So I would like to, even Rashtrapati found that better. So I would like to ask both of you, what does it mean in terms of what are the takeaways globally? You have defined various things. What if you summarize in 5-6 takeaways from global world as well as India, if Trump retains power and if Biden wins? Casey can start. Casey is
look, the difference is essentially the core of Indo-US relations, and the trajectory of Indo-US relations will remain the same. It'll grow. It's a question of the details. It's a question of the speed it acquires, or the public articulation of that relationship. Essentially it rests on 3-4 things. One is defense. On defense, for Secretary Pompeo to come to Delhi, stand with us, and directly threaten China is unheard of. I mean, this they don't even do with Taiwan. They don't even do it with their allies. So that, I think, was more electoral rhetoric. It was more Pompeo playing, if he has to, fight a presidential election next time. I didn't take that seriously. Because if Trump is not willing to stand with the allies, he's not going to come and fight with us and fight with China. So one is defense. But they are willing to sell us cutting-edge weapons. We've signed the 4 foundational agreements. They weren't all created during the Trump period. They started earlier. So it's a process which was given the final dimension during this period. Now, the other one is trade. On trade, we will get less pressure, but nevertheless, that issue is not going away. With Trump, it's a disruptive feature where he'll get after you and say, why are you not buying Harley Davidsons when the market may be just $3 million? There's no comparison at all between them. So with Trump, it was often parallel facts, totally unrelated to reality. But with Biden also, you'll have to sit down and really balance your trade and see where you're going with it. The other two are, one is the Islamic, and the third is Islamic world. Trump has caused tremendous amount of disruption in the Islamic world. He's gone after Iran, which complicates our relationship with Iran, then the handling of Afghanistan, Central Asia. He sided with Saudis and the Emiratis and the two Muhammads. That will change. And I think they must be the most concerned today, will be the two crown princes, one in Abu Dhabi and the one in Riyadh at the moment, on what happens, because they are afraid that a Biden presidency means that they will reach, or you might, in fact, get a former Deputy Secretary of State as the Secretary of State. And he's the one who negotiated the Joint Comprehensive Program, the nuclear deal with Iran. So, you know, that door may be reopened by America. Then you have fractures between Shia and Sunni, fractures between Sunni and Sunni. You've got Turks on the one side, and you've got Qataris with them on the Iranian side, and you've got all these others on the other side. Now, Trump has created this huge churn in the region. The next Biden will try to heal it, will try to, you know, see if we can get this entire region together to find a solution to West Asia, to Syria, to the problems, and to see how you can peacefully contain Iran rather than confronting it, and therefore opening the door to China. The Chinese have got greater support there. So these three basically, but the last one is on Indian domestic politics, freedom of expression, speech, how you deal with opposition here, etc. Now, these, how you deal with the minorities. I think this with Biden, because of the Democrats, we saw that altercation between a foreign minister, external affairs minister, and Jaipal, which Kamala Harris had joined, where he refused to meet someone because he thought they were not, they had been critical on Jammu and Kashmir. Now, therefore, with the Democrats, that may be back on the table. May not openly, but definitely that would be on the table. With Trump, that is not there. But with Trump, you inherit all the disruption, all the chaos, with the possibility he may go and cut a deal with China, and therefore leave you adrift.
You left out Pakistan in the entire narrative of yours.
Pakistan today is
that is more important for domestic optics.
Correct. But I think what has happened is, Prabhu, I now see a Sino-Pakistan combination. I don't think the Pakistan problem is a standalone problem now. And by the Chinese coming on the Ladakh border and with their interests through Gilgit-Baltistan and the CPEC, their interests are much closer. And we should think in terms of not any open confrontation with Pakistan alone. There's a good possibility it'll be two for the price of one. The Chinese may well, more directly than ever before, come to Pakistan's rescue in case of anything in this region, because they'll see it impinging on their economic interests in the CPEC, etc. So it's got more complicated. So the Chinese, the old patron US had left, they've got a new patron, which is very much there.
Rakesh, if Trump returns, what happens? But Casey has put out a narrative which is much more. They will unroll what Trump has done. They will do. What do you think that in US that happens, that outgoing president, the incoming president comes and dismantles everything which was laid by the previous president?
No, but sorry, Prabhu, you said if Trump returns.
Yeah.
Or are you saying if Biden comes?
If Biden comes, I'm answering both the questions. If Trump comes, what happens? Will he continue with the same rhetoric which Casey is talking about? Or Biden reverse everything which Trump has laid down?
Well, I think if Trump returns to power, then I think what we will see is an acceleration of the trends of disruption that Casey pointed out, particularly in West Asia. And that will have enormous implications for us. At the same time, Trump will certainly want to sell us more LNG, shale gas.
Mm-hmm.
He will also put pressure on us on the trade issue, on the visa issue. Yes, he will probably not talk to us about Kashmir or CAA or human rights or things like that, because he couldn't be bothered. He doesn't bother about it in his own country. So what the hell? Why should he talk about it to us? But as Casey is also absolutely right. He could well do a deal with China tomorrow, which may just leave you, out on a limb. Yeah. So in that sense, there is an element of unpredictability insofar as Trump is concerned. On the other hand, if his relationship with China continues to go downwards, then you will certainly find that they will, Pompeo or his successors or whoever, that the Defense Department, State Department, White House, Trump White House, will certainly want to develop closer ties with India, notwithstanding the unpredictable nature of Trump's tweets.
Right.
Okay, that's insofar as Trump is concerned. Now, if you come back to Biden, and let's say if Trump remains a one term and it becomes Biden who takes over the White House, then I think Biden's priorities, while there won't be a 180-degree reversal of everything that Trump has done, but there will be some calibrations. Like, for example, with China, Biden will try and find some kind of a modus vivendi, some way of working with China on certain issues, and at the same time, not giving up on the trade issue or on the tech issue, which has assumed its own identity now and has bipartisan support in the Congress, in the Senate, and so on. Second, Biden will try to restore a balanced relationship with Japan and with South Korea, two other allies in that region. Third, Biden will also attach enormous importance to reviving the arms control process, the first of which will be the New START treaty, which lapses in February of next year. And he will certainly revive that and extend it for a period of 5 years, so that you are seen as the arms control structure is not allowed to completely crumble, and then see how best that relationship with Russia can be taken forward. That is also a positive thing insofar as his European allies are concerned. And Biden administration will take efforts to repair relationship with the European allies, with NATO, with Germany, France, etc., etc. Then on Afghanistan, Biden will also want to exit, much as Trump has indicated. And so therefore, that exit will continue. But Biden will try to certainly restore a bit of balance, because although Biden has said that if he will go back into the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, but perhaps it may not be that easy. The Iranians also are difficult customers, as Casey knows very well. So, I mean, he will.
I will stop you because I'm now asking very journalistic, simple question.
Yeah. No.
We're also running out of time.
Rakesh,
so just to conclude, what I'm saying is that insofar as India is concerned, the priority that India will get in the Biden White House will, in my view, will drop to number 5 or number 6 after he has managed China, developed, restored Russia, restored a working relationship with allies, dealt with Afghanistan, dealt with the Middle East, Iran, and so on. And then, it's so, in a sense, your India's folder, as it were, as you say, where is the dossier? Where is the India dossier? Oh, it's at number 6.
No, I'm asking. You are already said India will be downgraded.
We're running out of time.
That's why I'm putting very straight question. You have already said that India will be downgraded if Biden wins. That is what you're telling me. Now, if I got it correctly.
It will have less importance because the economy, Indian economy.
You can't argue with a diplomat. I know all of you can say many things without saying anything. But the question is, I'm asking a very straight question. Pakistan will be happy, Pakistan and China will be happy if who wins according to you?
I think they'll be happier with Biden because then the whole Clinton group, whole earlier group that they have dealt with
will be back.
And they know that. Yeah.
You agree, Rajesh? Pakistan and China both will be happy if Biden wins?
Oh, certainly. China and
Certainly.
Pakistan both will be happier because you see, earlier she had perhaps
Hello.
thought that he could do a deal with Trump, but he suddenly realized that this guy is
हाँ
too
मैं कर रहा हूँ
unpredictable.
आज on the
So
other program.
therefore, he would prefer to deal with a more predictable Biden. And exactly as Casey said, if Biden comes in, then he comes in with a known set of people.
Last
So
question.
from that point of view
Last
as
question.
well,
Last question. India will be happy if.
I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
I'm
I
asking both
think
of you diplomats. I have
our
no opinion.
happiness, no, but let's face it, we have to look after our own interests. And part of the relevance that we will
The
have will
kind of
also
friendship
depend.
which Modi and Trump had, you are seeing Modi howdy and whatnot, Trump coming here, all sorts of things.
I
you are
don't think
seeing.
that counts
Even,
so very much. I'm sorry.
no,
I don't think that the howdy Modi and the namaste
both of
Trump
you
and all
agree
of
that
that.
India doesn't care whosoever wins.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have forgotten that Modi also had a very good relationship with Obama when he did the Chai Pe Charcha in Hyderabad House. So I think we will work with whoever it is. It depends on how strong the Indian economy is. What is India's role in its region? Can we manage our neighborhood? And I think it is that that will determine how important or where is the value or what is the importance that the White House will give to India.
Right.
Casey, do you agree that India
No,
will be
absolutely
okay?
correct. Absolutely, because we have to stop. We are a large country. We have to stop worrying, looking for endorsement and the hugs from leaders of other countries. I think we should get over this. This Jappi Puppy doesn't work.
Correct.
It's more for domestic display. It's very good to display domestically. But all these guys are, absolutely total
Hardcore.
pakka politicians. They understand all this. I think ultimately it's a question of how useful are you to their interests in the world. And to that extent, you be pragmatic and deal with it.
Thank you all, gentlemen. It was a very exciting discussion, almost as exciting as the elections. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.